Trinidad and Tobago. I suppose I should echo Three Canal. Morning, everybody. Again, as we get going with our discussion now on the refinery, because Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley has asked the Evaluation Committee to re-examine Patriotic's bid. That's following the outright rejection on Saturday, as announced by the Energy Minister. That disclosure has now come about. The committee has been mandated to report to the Cabinet by November 30th. Is this just stringing the Patriotic Energies people along even longer, maybe with a view towards the THA elections in January? Well, we're joined by David Abdulah, the MSJ political leader, who I believe would have had a webinar last evening on the truth about the entire Patriotic bid and so on. And we also have with us Mr. Robin Narayan Singh, who still has that smile on his face from the budget presentation and the opening up of the gas stations. He's the president of the Petroleum Dealers Association. Good morning, gentlemen. Good to have you with us this morning. Could I start with you, David Abdulah, first of all, because correct me if I'm wrong, you are on record as describing Saturday's announcement as the second economic crime by this PNM administration. Now that there's to be a re-evaluation, do you still hold that view?
Morning, Fazia, and morning to Mr. Narayan Singh, morning to all of your viewers and listeners. Well, last night in my webinar, you're right, I spent about an hour and a half going through the situation very carefully from the point of the Lashley Committee all the way up to what happened on Saturday. And I did, of course, reference the late afternoon announcement by the Prime Minister. So I said at the end of last night's session that if Patriotic does not get the refinery, then that would be the second biggest economic crime by the Rowley government. The first one, of course, being the closure, the shutdown of Petrotrin. So I have put in a caveat, if you wish, yesterday based upon the Prime Minister's intervention. And the reason why I put in that caveat, obviously, I mean, Saturday, a lot of people, including the Express editorial yesterday, which I think was a very commendable editorial, which said you can't just be involved in a very complex, detailed negotiation. You get a documentation later on Thursday night. And Saturday, you announced, without informing Patriotic, you just announced to the country, well, that's it. And interestingly, Mr. Robert Lee Hunt, who is vice chair of the PNM, as far as I know, he still holds that position. And he was a member of an interministerial team when he was a member of the cabinet earlier this year, which was engaged in the process. He said you can't just stop this process just like that in a blog, a vid blog that he did yesterday sometime or Sunday sometime. So I think the voices were mounting, and Mr. Roger had a very good press conference on Sunday morning, where he laid out a number of facts, and he said at the end, listen, you need to, Prime Minister, reestablish the Evaluation Committee and let the Evaluation Committee consider all the documentation that is before. You can't, in other words, who made the decision between late Thursday night and the announcement sometime on Saturday? Who made that decision that the Patriotic's last proposal, not the final proposal, but the last proposal was to be thrown in the dust heap? And I think we need to ask those questions. Who made that decision? How come that decision was made? On what basis was that decision made? And so on. And as I pointed out last night, and Mr. Roger had also indicated in his press conference, but I went into it in more detail, the three issues that were identified by the minister in his press conference really don't hold any water if you examine it carefully.
Let me get a view now of Mr. Narayan Singh and your own perspective on this situation as president of the Petroleum Dealers Association. Mr. Narayan Singh, what is your view on this? Good morning to you.
Hi, good morning to you. Good morning to the listening public and Mr. David Abdulah. My take is that the petroleum dealers come from a different perspective. We, regardless of what sector you are in, we are controlled by a Petroleum Act. And the Petroleum Act takes into consideration exploration and production, refining and marketing, and retailing. And the retailing is what we call downstream. The production the refining and marketing is midstream, and exploration and production is upstream. And to be sitting here with Mr. David Abdulah, who is the midstream who operates in the midstream. It's quite an honor for me because he has a very different market. Our market is dealing with, cents, 27 cents margins, whereas Mr. Abdulah at the midstream level, they deal with markets, foreign markets and local markets. So the idea of Patriotic, it is very complicated, it is detailed, and every segment is very detailed, defined in the Act, and there are different licenses that goes into these markets. And the licenses are very, very detailed. And I hope I'm explaining the different segment of the market so that you and your listeners could understand.
I understand you. I understand you on that, Mr. Narayan Singh. But if you would allow me, it sounds almost like you're treading on eggshells. Like you don't want to get people vexed with you based on what you say. But let me, if you would allow me, just to ask the question. I suppose what I really want to find out, or what we would like to find out from you, is that are you in favor of Patriotic getting the refinery, or would you, do you have any reservations about Patriotic, which comes out of the OWTU environment? Do you have any reservations about Patriotic getting the refinery?
Oh, no, not at all. What I'm interested in is the efficiencies of these operations, and there are synergies that goes along because we deal with the public at large. At least, we deal in the detail, in the retailing of the product that the midstream refine. So I am in favor of anyone who is prepared to provide a real good and efficient service to us so that we could provide efficient service to the public of Trinidad and Tobago.
Sure. And before I go back to Mr. Abdulah to get some more clarity, because I want to ask Mr. Abdulah, is he privy to any further information as far as the non-disclosure agreement and so on? But before I get back to Mr. Abdulah, just very quickly, have you been given any further information as far as this opening up of the gas station sector? Has any further detail come out from that announcement on October the 5th?
No, we have not met with the minister as yet. The minister, I think they're probably still going through what they have to go through, but we have not had any details in the way the system is going to be rolled out to us.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Mr. Narayan Singh. Stay with us, don't go anywhere, because I'm sure we'll be coming back to you in a matter of minutes. David Abdulah, let's return to the issue, the primary issue of the refinery at Pointe. Pierre, are you privy to any further information? Because so far as we're aware, this non-disclosure agreement has been adhered to by both sides.
Yeah, yes, it is, Pazir. But, doing a little bit of research and adding up one and one, because I'm not part of the union's leadership team. I retired 4.5 years ago, so I'm not part of Patriotic. I have no role in Patriotic. But the minister on Saturday in his press conference, as the Minister of Energy, said there were 3 key issues that on which the decision was taken not to go with Patriotic. 1, the purchase price financing. 2, the restart financing. And 3, the issue of the first priority lien. Now, let me just go through that very, very quickly.
Sure.
Purchase price financing. If you recall, the Patriotic went through a whole extensive process of arriving at a decision by the cabinet that it would be the preferred bidder, which decision was announced in Parliament on the 20th of September. And that was done by the Minister of Finance, and he said in his statement that I'm authorized by the Cabinet to make this statement. Now, in that statement to Parliament, and it is a media release or statement up on the Minister of Finance's website, it will also be on the records of Hansard, it said that part of the bidding process involved the issue of identifying the potential buyer or lessee possesses refining and marketing experience and so on. It contemplates a restart of the refinery, and that the proposed purchase price and or lease terms are potentially attractive. You remember then the minister said that there'll be 10 issues that Patriotic had to address within a month, and the evaluation committee would consider those. And one of those 10 was 1, confirmation of its ability to finance the purchase and operation of the refinery. So the issue of the purchase price and the ability to finance the purchase was dealt with way back more than a year ago. And so why is this issue now of the purchase price financing coming back up again? Because you recall that Patriotic originally said they were going to put $700 million upfront cash to purchase the refinery. And Pierre, which is the tank farm and the jetty operations, the port operations at Pointe. The minister in his statement in September of 2019 then said that Cabinet decided that they wouldn't go with $700 million upfront, which Patriotic put on the table, but instead would say you have a moratorium of 3 years and then spread out the $700 million in annual payments thereafter. So it'd be year 4 going into year 14, 70 million plus interest at a fair market price. So the issue of the purchase price was not an issue in 2019, and in fact the government said we don't want your upfront cash, we're prepared to take it in a staggered basis. So why now has the purchase price come back up again? In terms of the restart financing, that was also addressed in those 10 points that the Minister of Finance identified. So those things had been resolved a year ago. So why have they come back up again? And the only answer that we could come up with, it was in point 3 of the minister's statement, which was the issue of the first priority lien. Now, a lien simply is, for your listeners and viewers, that if you have a motor car and you borrowed money from the bank has a mortgage bill of sale. So you can't sell that motor car unless you either pay off your loan, in which case the bank no longer has a hold on it, or you get agreement of the bank to sell it, because the bank in fact owns the car. You're using the car, you're driving it, you could mash it up and so on, but the bank owns it. So this first priority lien is important. And I went online yesterday and I downloaded, I don't have it on this particular laptop, but I downloaded a prospectus which had been issued by Trinidad Petroleum Holdings in the amount of just over $570 million US, and that was issued in 2019. And going through the prospectus, because they were trying to raise money to help to pay off some of the previous loans. And Trinidad Petroleum Holdings indicated under the issue of collateral, well, the guarantors, one of the guarantors is Guaracara, and another one is Pierre, a third one is Heritage. Now, Heritage is a producing company in exploration and production. Pierre is the one that operates the port, Jetty owns the tank farm and so on, and Guaracara owns the refinery. So, Guaracara and Pierre, which are what Patriotic is seeking to buy, are the guarantors of that loan. And when you look at the collateral, it says the collateral are all of the assets and land and title of Guaracara and Pierre. That's what the prospectus that I downloaded yesterday said. So reading what the minister said, it would seem as if the government side now cannot actually sell the refinery to Patriotic, because that loan that, according to the prospectus, now I said last night, and I say it again, if that prospectus is not what actually happened, then the government must come out and say so, because it was up on our website last night. And so if that is not the case, then I will withdraw what I'm saying, but the government needs to come clean. The government needs to say, did they shift the goalposts from what Cabinet had decided in September last year, of no payment for 3 years, no upfront payment for 3 years, and annual payment of $70 million plus interest thereafter, after the end of the third year, for 10 years and so on. Have they changed that now to the need for Patriotic to provide upfront cash? Now, I don't know, because I'm not part of the process. If that is so, why did that change? And did it change because somebody on the government's negotiating side messed up with respect to the information about that lien or that mortgage, that guarantor arrangement and collateral of the refinery, and therefore they couldn't sell unless they got upfront cash to pay off those creditors, in which case, once they're paid off, then the sale agreement could go through. Now, Mr. Roger, last point very quickly, Mr. Roger in his press conference did say that they sought out, because this information, according to the union statement on Sunday, this information was only provided in they started getting this information in July of 2020. Then in August, the end of August, it was confirmed by the TPHL's international lawyers to Patriotic's lawyers, international lawyers. And it was only in September that documentation was actually provided. That's according to the union statement. So the interministerial team only met with Patriotic on the 21st of October. So the union, well, the Patriotic only had a very short window to try now to change its whole financing arrangement that had been agreed to since and approved by Cabinet since September. And they were able to get some correspondence from a top 10 international bank, according to Mr. Roger. And that was provided on the 28th of October, late in the evening. And that was dismissed out of hand by the government on Saturday. So I think that is the issue. And so I don't have any information in terms of non-disclosure. What the details, I'm just adding up one and what I gathered from my search of the internet yesterday.
Okay, one and one makes 111, quite clearly, quite obviously as well.
Indeed. That's a cricketing analogy.
Indeed, depending on how you look at it. But it's a very serious issue. And if I could bring Mr. Narayan Singh back into the discussion, while we might, in some ways, Mr. Narayan Singh may be making light of it. And you touched on an important issue, the whole question of efficiency of operations of the refinery. Because we know for decades what has been going on with the refinery. Whether you want to believe it is worker inefficiency or political mismanagement, do you believe, Mr. Narayan Singh, that whichever way this goes, whether Patriotic get it, whether Clash get it, whether Beowulf get it, whether some fowl in the back of somewhere get it, do you believe that at the end of this process, Mr. Narayan Singh, that we will have an efficiently operating refinery that will work for the benefit of all of Trinidad and Tobago?
Well, that's really the hope for every Trinidadian, because it will benefit all of us. And there are so many things we have to consider. The environmental concerns, because I heard Mariano Brown talk about the environmental liabilities, both in the midstream and the downstream industry. It is a big expense, and it damage the whole of our society. These are things that we all have to consider also.
And in considering all of these factors, because you are in one element of the industry at the service end, as far as being the petroleum dealers, do you think that the longer this matter goes on without being resolved finally one way or the other, does this impact upon your segment of the industry in any way?
Well, Fazir, the uncertainty does cause a lot of concern. The uncertainty in any business environment, uncertainty, we strive for stability, and the longer this continues, it creates anxiety, not only in the business community, but also the Confederation of Chambers. They are also concerned, because there are a lot of spill-off, there are a lot of multiplier effects when business fail, a community fails. You dislodge facilities for a community. Business is really about service, and service to the community and your customers. So when things like this is not resolved, the uncertainty is very stressful.
And David Abdulah, if I could come back to you. At the end of the day, because from the very beginning, this thing didn't make sense. If you would allow me. If I buy in a car from you, David, and you say the price is $60,000, and I say, okay, I'll give you the cash up front. And I say, no, it's okay, take 5 years to pay it. You don't have to pay anything now, take 5 years. Does that make any sense to you?
Well, it makes sense in one way, and that is that in addition to the purchase of the car, I now have to spend a lot of money to get the car roadworthy. And that money in this case could be anywhere between 400 million and $600-700 million US. I don't have the figures. But quite clearly, the union, in responding to the 10-point issues that had been raised by the minister in September in his address, also spoke about dealing with historical environmental liabilities and all the additional work that involved in the startup and so on, inclusive of the refinery refurbishment plan and the terminal startup plan. I'm quoting directly from what the minister said there. So it would have allowed Patriotic to raise the money for 500 million US, whatever it is, 600 million US, to get the refinery in a condition and a state of readiness to start up. And therefore, the moratorium on the purchase price would have enable Patriotic's cash flow to be much better in terms of paying off, first of all, that first set of money they needed to get the refinery in a condition, which is the money to repair the car. And then as they were earning that money now to be able to pay the purchase price. So there was merit in what the government's approach was. And we have to now ask, has the government changed, moved the goalpost and changed? And Mr. Narayan Singh is right. The closure of the refinery has had a tremendously negative impact on the communities of the South. And Patriotic's getting the refinery would mean a significant injection of capital to get the tanks and the pipelines and all the equipment up to mark. Companies in the energy services sector would get contracts, workers would get employed either directly by Patriotic or by the energy services company. The money that comes in will then feed into other companies in Marbella and Gasparillo and Claxton Bay and further afield and so on. As people spend money, other businesses will pick up. And so foreign exchange will come in because this has to be US dollars coming in to be spent locally. So foreign exchange will get a boost. And a lot of things will begin to pick up because apart from this, what else is there to create some kind of stimulus in the economy at this point in time? And there is nothing. There's nothing in the government's plans that can create some immediate stimulus to get the economy moving. And that is not good for anybody at this point in time. So going with Patriotic is a way of kickstarting a lot of economic activity in the country.
David, I'll come back to you for a final perspective in a moment. Let me just get a final word as well from Mr. Narayan Singh. Mr. Narayan Singh, you talked about the issue of uncertainty. Do you believe, based on all that you know, and again, we may not know a lot about the specifics of how this negotiation is going, given that apparently it's going to be reconsidered now with the blessing of the Prime Minister. Do you believe that this matter is going to be resolved sooner rather than later for the benefit of the entire industry, or is it going to just drag along because we have a THA election coming up?
Well, politics and business is like two different scales. It's when the government decide to sell Patriotic, I'm sure they had something in mind. But if you keep changing the goalposts and you keep extending it into different avenues, it will cause concern. I mean, because it's no way Patriotic could measure up if you keep changing it. So I think, it has to come to a resolve. It has to come to some final decision. And the government has to make, a decision at some point in time.
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead, Mr.
I hope to do this pretty soon to bring some sort of closure to the whole issue of Patriotic and the refinery.
Okay, thanks very much, Mr. Narayan Singh. Well, David Abdulah, we thought they did it on Saturday when the Energy Minister said definitively that is that. No, only to find out now that the Prime Minister has decided that it's going to be extended now, the consideration, to November the 30th. If it is that you're talking about something as important and as complex as negotiating the sale of a refinery, that 1 minute you could say they're done, next minute you could say we're going to reconsider. Can we really take this government seriously about this entire process other than playing politics?
It's very, very difficult to do so, and there's a serious trust issue. If you remember in July, down in Santa Flora, the Prime Minister was doing a campaign meeting, and when he was announcing giving out land to petroleum workers, I suppose that was part of their campaign. And he said they're ready to sign within days. They want to sign it before the elections. And then they pulled back from that, and I think it was because of this same issue of the lien and so on. So we've been getting different stories. And Mr. Khan, when he was asked by media on Saturday, he couldn't say, well, what the plans were going forward. He just said, we look at some private capital. It was very airy-fairy. So no, and that is why we need these kinds of discussions on the media. We need informed debate and discussion. We need to push the government to making the right decision. And public involvement is absolutely critical. And that's one of the roles that I will play in terms of MSJ, trying to provide information and getting public opinion, informed public opinion, not now because I'm MSJ and is against PNM or UNC, I'm against both, but inform public opinion to get the right decision on this critical economic activity and critical asset.
David Abdulah, thanks very much for taking the time to speak with us this morning, the leader of the MSJ, and I'm sure he'll be involved in different discourses, other media, this media, and indeed on his own website and Facebook page and so on in relation to this. And I suppose at the end of the day, we will remain skeptical until the government comes clean, or Patriotic comes clean with the specific. It don't really add up. That if on Thursday you get a submission, on Saturday you kill it stone dead, and then on Monday you hear, okay, we're extending the consideration now until November 30th. It's not like you're talking about a parlor, you're talking about a refinery with all of the issues. I don't think even a parlor would operate that way. But anyway, here's a submission.